For those of you who already joined, we'll begin in just a few minutes here. So it looks like everyone's still dialing in. Let's give it about 2 more minutes. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Happy holidays. I'm Marcelo Monteagudo, the head of sales at Impact Group, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. This webinar is for anyone looking to get started with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Whether you're just curious or ready to implement, you're in the right place here. Before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment to give a brief overview of Impact Group for those who may be unfamiliar with us. Then, to help set the stage for today's presentation, we'll quickly touch on the current landscape of AI before I turn it over to our main presenters, Bruce Jacobson and Steve Chihos. Following the main presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A session. We encourage you to submit your questions in the chat throughout the webinar. We'll do our best to address the most common ones. But while we may not get to every single question, we certainly look forward to continuing the conversation with each of you afterwards. Impact Group is a management and technology consulting firm based in Oakdale, Minnesota. We've been around for over 30 years, and we've led everything from multi-year business and digital transformations to IT and cloud strategy to ERP implementations, upgrades, and integrations, whether it's SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, or our recently launched Microsoft Dynamics 365 practice. The other side of Impact Group provides technology services, including managed services, service desk, and cybersecurity. We have some of the best technical problem solvers in the business. So between our consulting and technology services, we're a single point of contact for many organizations for all of their IT and technology needs. This is a snapshot of the clients we work with. It's a wide range from startups to the Fortune 500 and everything in between, from private to public companies to government entities. We work across nearly every major industry sector. So over the past year or two, AI has literally been everywhere. It's been all over the news, social media, which I'm sure you've seen, unless you've been living under a rock, and has generated quite a buzz from Microsoft Copilot to ChatGPT, which are both examples of generative AI, a subset of machine learning and deep learning. Both of these tools are powered by the same GPT models, OpenAI's GPT-3 and GPT-4, which are revolutionizing the way we work and interact with technology. Recent data shows that 64% of people struggle to find the time and energy to get their work done. If you're not one of them, I must admit, I really envy you. That said, many people work hard but struggle to find ways to work smarter. And as we all try to work smarter, not harder, and some of us prefer to do both, the good news is there's a huge opportunity to boost productivity with the right tools. Here are just a few examples highlighting the benefits of using generative AI. As it gets more and more popular and adoption rapidly grows, companies are consistently sharing strong ROI results. Later in this webinar, we'll share an ROI calculator we put together. It's something that's come out of many conversations we've had with our clients on how to get approval to go and use it and building a solid business case. Now I'll turn things over to our main presenters, Bruce Jacobson and Steve Chihos. Just a quick intro. Bruce has been at the forefront of Microsoft's suite of productivity and collaboration platforms since their inception. His journey began with one of the first installations of SharePoint and has since specialized in architecting business solutions on Microsoft platforms. Steve has over 35 years of experience in technology adoption, business transformation, and organizational change, and has guided over 1 million people through the change adoption process, which is absolutely mind-blowing. But with that, Steve, take it away.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot for the intro, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate your interest in Impact Group, your interest especially in Copilot as a tool. And what we'll do is we'll introduce, for anyone who has not touched this at all, we just want to start with just a level set. So let's start by talking about what is AI. A good book that I would highly recommend if you haven't read it is called Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. And in there, he talks about AI almost like an assistant. Think of it as a person, but don't get too far into the personalization of it. But think of it as a tool. It's a tool that knows everything that you're supposed to have remembered that you know. It's supposed to be able to find all the stuff you have access to, even if you didn't realize or remember that you had access to it. At an individual and an organizational level, think of AI in general as a coworker. Someone who's sitting right next to you, almost like as if you had your private assistant who actually remembers everything you're supposed to remember. And you can ask that assistant questions. So think of questions, queries, and all the information available to you as a tool to help you be more productive. And here's something that Ethan Mollick says in this book that I really like. Consider whatever tool you're using today to be the worst AI you'll ever use. And what that means is this stuff's getting better and getting smarter as it references and learns more by just through use. So that's just, if you haven't done a little bit of research on just what is AI, this is a great first kind of starter resource. Go ahead. Then what is Copilot? Well, Copilot is an engine, a tool that sits on top of and integrates with most of the Microsoft products that you already have. In fact, Copilot is so ingrained in the Microsoft stack now that folks like Bruce are finding new places for it to provide value almost every day. Copilot is powered by ChatGPT and other OpenAI kind of access methods to look at your data. It can be used in context of a given tool to boost your productivity in Excel, in Word, in Outlook, in Microsoft Teams. And it's so integrated with the Microsoft apps that you can actually ask questions in the context of what you're doing. It's very user-friendly. In fact, the best skill for you to pick up early is how to ask good questions. It's always getting better, and you can count on it to get to start providing value right away. Microsoft did an early access program, and this has been actually going on for quite a while. And one of the early reports from that program showed that there's a ton of value here. Most people, a vast majority of people, found they were more productive by using Copilot. And I'll let you read all these numbers on the side, and some of this stuff will be available for you to read afterwards. But I want you to find out, or I want you to find right there in the middle of the slide is something 84% find it easier to take action items after a meeting or to take action. Because of the tools embedded in Teams, it'll capture what you promised you would do. And all of this note-taking that you're so used to doing manually, having that done for you is one of the simple early things you can do with Copilot. Almost everyone who used it found value in that. There's also a cool little stat there to the right. 77% would rather have access to Copilot than over a free lunch, meaning they get somewhat used to using it. It speeds up your work, and they don't want to work without it anymore. We'll go into this in a little bit more detail over time, but we want to show you that there's some very simple scenarios that Microsoft recommends you try. When you get your access to Copilot, there's a free version, there's a cost per seat version, there's a pro version, et cetera. But you'll see more about which versions. But some foundational skills that would be good for you to try first are things like in Teams recapping a meeting. When they mean recap, they'll literally capture who said what promises were made, what action items, and a summary of everything that happened in that meeting. Super easy. It's just a couple button clicks away. Another that I like is number 4. You can summarize a document, whether it's 700 words or 7,000 words. You can ask for a bulletized summary of an entire document straight inside the app. And you can do it inside Word, you can do it inside PowerPoint. And what it does is it takes what you know, it takes what's presented, feeds that back to you based on your prompt. And the third one I want to point out is number 7. If you're at a loss for where to start when writing content in Word, a good, well-written prompt can help you get started. It can jog your memory of what you should remember about a topic. It can find and access all the data that you have access to. For example, stuff on your OneDrive, stuff that your organization already knows, stuff that's kind of universally and publicly available about the topic you're going to write about. And it will help you frame up that document in Word. And the last thing I'll say is that just like with any assistant, you wouldn't just take that work and hand it in as your own. You wouldn't put your name on it and say, there, I'm done. Just know that everything you create using any AI tool, including Copilot, does require that you take the time to read it, check it, make sure that it's valid. And since it's embedded in all of these apps, you'll start to pick up what exactly do you get when you write these prompts in PowerPoint, in Word, in Teams, in Excel, et cetera. And you'll start to see the personalization, what you do with what it gives you. That's actually the most important part. We have tons of content on good starter applications and scenarios for this, but we're going to go ahead and move on to Bruce.
Thanks, Steve. Steve and I have done several of these presentations, and every time he shows that slide, I think of all the new things that I'm doing with Copilot. It's like the more you use it, the more value you get out of it. So we can go to the next slide. So Microsoft was fortunate when Copilot came along and this technology came along because it's really kind of building on top of a lot of the infrastructure that they've already done. Back in the day, I remember Microsoft acquiring several search engines and several search technologies and incorporating them into initially SharePoint and then into Microsoft 365. And a lot of that was due to the fact that they structured this so that it would be good for this data retrieval. They set up these indexes, and that's since been really blown out. The back end of Microsoft 365, all of those data points are all connected via something called Microsoft Graph. And on top of that, Microsoft builds something called a semantic index. And the semantic index is really looking at all of the relationships, literally billions of relationships within your organization, of how do I personally relate to my data? How do I relate to my team? How does my team relate to another team? Et cetera, et cetera. All of that stuff is intertwined. And it also is all permissions trimmed. So I can only see things within Microsoft 365 that I have access to. So Copilot is really taking advantage of that infrastructure. If we go to the next slide, we can kind of see how that works. So this is kind of a messy slide, but it's a fun slide to understand. So in the upper left corner, you can see the Microsoft 365 app. So if I'm in PowerPoint, for example, and I want to have Copilot create a slide deck for me, I make that query and say, hey, Copilot, create 10 slides on this topic. And the first thing that happens is that query goes to Microsoft Graph and goes and looks at the semantic index. And that's doing something called grounding, where we need that request to stay in context, right? Needs to be in the context of the permissions, needs to be in the context of the semantic index and how all of this stuff is related, and also needs to be in the context of all the permissions. And so that then goes off to the large language model, to ChatGPT, to that engine. And that engine returns a result, but that result is also once again, put back into context and then sent back to the user. So if I make that request in PowerPoint, I can make that same request in Word and I would get slightly different results. And it certainly would be in slightly different formats. In PowerPoint, it's going to literally create all the slides and add pictures and everything. And in Word, it's going to put that in the context of paragraphs because that's the format that it would be in. So all of this is just layered on top of everything that already exists in Microsoft 365. And by the way, this is a huge differentiator compared to just using an off-the-shelf tool, is the ability to have all of this security and this whole layer that is in between you and your users and the AI model. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk about this a little bit more in real world because we've been talking about this in the context of the tools in Microsoft 365, the Office suite, and other tools. And Marcel, if you click next, those are called AI assistants. And I always think of these as things that I do personally, right? In the context of the business that I'm doing for the day. If I'm in Teams doing some things, I can chat, or Copilot is right there for me. If I'm in PowerPoint, Copilot's right there. And I can make these requests of this tool, and it will give me these results. But Marcel, if you click next, the other thing we have is AI agents, and this kind of takes this to a higher level. And these are things that are more customized. These may, in fact, operate totally autonomously. They can kind of sit in the background and run. Oftentimes, AI agents are used in conjunction with other Microsoft tools like the Power Platform, a workflow that maybe kicks off something, and then a custom Copilot intervenes to look at some of the data and take subsequent action. So I think of these as being not only a little bit more sophisticated, but additionally a little bit more corporate, if you will, right? This is stuff that really relates to our business as a whole, or a business as a team, instead of our business as me doing work day to day. Next, Marcel. So there's really three kinds of things that you can do from a Microsoft perspective. You can buy Microsoft 365 Copilot, and that is out of the box. As soon as you get that license, you can open up any app in Microsoft 365, and there's Copilot. So you could open up PowerPoint, say, I need a slide deck. You click on the icon, ask it the question, and voila, it gives you the slide deck. Ditto with all of the other apps. The other thing you can do, though, is you can use something called Copilot Studio. And this is to kind of expand that functionality to other uses and other scenarios. And if that doesn't take you far enough, you actually can do anything that you want to do as a corporation, totally bespoke application using all the different AI engines that are out there, and do that also safely and securely via Azure OpenAI and the GitHub Copilot. So you really don't have a use case that you can address by taking advantage of this platform and all of these fundamentals. So Copilot Studio is this tool that we then can create our own custom copilots. And Marcel, if you click to the next slide, this is similar to that other messy slide we looked at, but it's kind of simplified. And the message here is the fact that Copilot Studio has more than 1,400. I actually think that that's up to 17 or 1,800, but I couldn't verify that. I remember hearing that in one of the meetings I was at, but lots of pre-built connectors. If there's not a pre-built connector, you can easily build one. And now is what you can do is incorporate Copilot into other data and even other places. So maybe you have a CRM tool or an ERP platform or an HR tool. And here again, you can actually use a custom Copilot to kind of broaden out these scenarios in which you want to take advantage of the Copilot technologies.
Hey, Bruce, there was a question in chat. Do you know offhand if there's a connector pre-built for SAP?
There is.
Excellent.
So you can flip to the next slide. And I mentioned Azure OpenAI. once again, this gives you can take advantage of all of the security and compliance features that are fundamental to the Microsoft and Azure platforms. But additionally, you can build something very, very specific and very niche, um, using whatever kind of engine that you want. So this could be an engine that's not ChatGPT per se, but could be one of the other many engines out there as well, and build something totally bespoke to address that very, very specific need. So let's take a look at this real quick. I'm going to share out, take control from you, Marcelo,
Sure.
and share out real quick, just so that you can kind of see what this looks like. So we don't have the time to totally do everything here, but this is Copilot Studio when you first go to it. And Copilot Studio is really just this way for you to create some different custom Copilots. And so you can literally type in here a simple question and have Copilot do that. You can also look at some of the other templates that are out here as far as a starting point from a model perspective. There's already different things out here. And really is what this comes down to is either asking Copilot to help you create a Copilot, or you can actually manually configure this or come back and reconfigure this later by naming it and describing it and giving it instructions and designating the knowledge base in which you want this to work. And so I created one recently for a customer, and it's called the Microsoft 365 Training Assistant. And is what we set this up to do is Microsoft has a training site out there that has all kinds of wonderful resources relating to Microsoft 365 products. And we created this so that users within the organization, all users, and in particular new employees, could have a reference place that they could go and ask questions and get information about the use of Microsoft 365 products. And so I could type in here a question, and you can see I've got a couple of questions up here that I've already done. And I'll just show you a couple of these. What are the use cases for Planner? So here's some of the different things that you can do with Planner, right? So if we had a person that was new to Planner, it's like, what the heck's that for? Well, I can quickly get a summary of this information. From here, I could definitely click out and go into that training center if I wanted to. But this gives me a quick summary for me to ask questions of it. I did another one down here for OneNote. Maybe I'm new to OneNote, and I say, what the heck is this OneNote thing, right? It'll tell me some of the use cases for this. So once again, this is just an easy way for me to get information from that existing website. This could be a different scenario that you have where maybe you want to look at some very specific SharePoint content, and take advantage of that within your organization. And I've actually done this as well, where we've created an assistant looking at some specific new hire information that HR collected and being able to ask questions against that repository. So all kinds of different scenarios that don't fit into that kind of out of the box mold of being inside of a specific app, but rather are things that you just come up with and you want to do. So that's kind of Copilot Studio and what that whole thing's about. So
hey, Bruce,
Marcel,
can I jump in here real quick with a comment on what you've just shown?
yeah.
My first reaction, a lot of people's first reaction is, how is this different from just searching the web for that kind of content? Well, here's what's cool. You actually told it exactly where to look. You put constraints on where to look, so it doesn't bring you all kinds of garbage and ads and stuff. And second is, it's formatted in a format that you can actually use it right now.
Correct.
So literally, it is a direct answer to your question, just like as if I had asked a person to spend several hours scrubbing all that content and present the 30-second version to me. Do you see how clean that is and how organized that is?
And you're absolutely right, Steve. And I think that last point that you made is also worthy of note. When I created this Copilot, it said, where do you want to use this? And I said, I want to use it in Teams. So now it knows, okay, here's how I'm going to present this information, right? Because it has context and that's already baked in. It's not something I have to do. It just knows that. So All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I think, Marcel, I turn it back to you again.
Sure. And while I take it over, Bruce, we had a couple quick questions. I'm not sure if you know offhand, but they were connector related questions. Is there a connector to Nav Dynamics, and is there a connector for NECS Entree? I'm not familiar with that, but just wanted to kind of throw those out there.
You bet. I'm not sure on the first one, and I believe that there is on the second one. So it's odd that I know that, but I'm pretty sure there is. So, and once again, there are a lot of connectors, and they keep adding them at just a breakneck pace. But also know that it's not that difficult to create another connector, right? From a dev perspective. So this is not some huge effort if you need a connector to something.
All right, I'm going to jump in now and talk about the next subject, which is how do you as an organization pick up Copilot and put it to use? So the Copilot adoption journey, the implementation journey is our topic. Microsoft gives some really good guidance on this in 3 tracks. First of all, the leadership of your organization really needs to see and understand the capabilities of AI, the choice of Copilot as your AI assistant, and help build almost like the rationale. Why should we as an organization do this? Why should you as an individual look into this? Tell us what you need, we'll give you what you need, but that's a dialogue that starts with leadership and understanding. A second is it's a change. It's a human thing. And each of us, if we're adopting new things, goes through something of an adoption curve. And if you've never done technology implementations before, and I'm guessing most of you have, you know that not everyone adapts to things at the same pace. Not everyone has the same needs. Not everyone's starting from the same place. So highly encourage you to invest some time internally and with maybe external partners in guiding the human elements of this. So Microsoft has a work stream just for those human transformation tasks. And then the most obvious is all the technical work, the technical skills. Like Bruce is going to help you build your copilots that fit your business and your use cases and scenarios. You'll want to make sure you've got your security and you've got your access and you know what licenses you need. All these things about managing the technical implementation, those will only provide value if individuals adapt. And individuals will probably struggle to adapt if there's not leadership behind it and reinforcement behind it. So think of all 3 of these working together under an umbrella of principles, responsible principles such as what data is exposed to Copilot, how should you use Copilot, what are the rules of the road. So the methodology that we'll show you, and Bruce and I will kind of tag team showing you these 2 main work streams. Think of the leadership journey as being consistently in place for the entire implementation of Copilot and after. But the user enablement part, which is that human element, prepares individuals, teams, and the whole organization to adopt the use of AI in general and to employ Copilot as a tool specifically. On the technical side, all the work of getting it deployed, getting your licenses set up, optimizing, getting governance in place, getting those rules of the road locked in, configuring and testing your security, make sure you're compliant. All the elements of technical readiness and user enablement, those happen in parallel as a part of your implementation. So I'm going to go through kind of the way that we approach change. And then Bruce is going to go into the technical side. So we use probably the world's most commonly used method called ProSize ADKAR model for individual adoption. And if you can imagine, it's hard to change unless you're first aware that you have to. And you have to understand what is that about? What do you need me to do? And then you do some sort of a value judgment to decide, is that something I want to do? So you build a little bit of desire for that. And you can see that these things require communication. They require alignment. They require a little bit of understanding of the rationale for the change. Once I have that desire and I believe that this is something good for me, I need to go out and learn about it. So acquiring the knowledge might be on a technical side for some roles. It might be on a more of a scenario-based side for other individuals, but each individual has a need for a certain amount of knowledge before they can adapt. Then as they work with it, and we'll show you in a minute, our approach really starts with piloting this stuff. We would like you to start at small first and grow your organization's ability to apply Copilot, use it in a way that makes sense to you, and then as you set those expectations, reinforce them organization-wide. We've already noticed that a lot of organizations throw licenses at this. They give people access to it, they play with it for a little while, and then there's this big flat spot where everybody's like, I'm sorry, I don't remember. Why are we doing this? Oh, I don't have the time to learn how to do this. Do I really have to do this? So what AdCard does is it guides you through the entire adoption process. So we are ProSci certified. This is one of the ways we approach this. Go ahead to the next slide. We have two goals when we help you with Copilot. Number one is we recognize everyone goes through that change adoption curve. There's this idea that when you start using something new, it's going to take you longer, maybe for a while until you build that skill. But once you learn how to adapt, the acceleration is pretty quick. And what we'd like to do is make sure we account for each individual on their journey, as well as adoption at a group level, so you can fully internalize and apply tools like Copilot. The chart over on the right just shows that in an organization, you could have individuals at various stages of adoption, all the way from fully leveraging Copilot to openly rejecting it. And there's a point that sometimes gets asked here, does everybody need to use this? Does everybody in my organization need a Copilot license? And one of the questions we had when we presented this topic earlier was, how do I even decide who needs it? And it's an excellent question in that as an organization, we highly encourage you to do some work to find out which roles would benefit the most. Start with the people who have the most to gain by using Copilot. Then that chart off to the right is a lot easier because you don't even approach people who don't need it yet, or you don't really work with the people who are most say prone to not want to adopt it. Instead, work most closely with the people who most want it to be successful. Our goal in parallel is to have uniform adoption in a reasonable amount of time. So I'll go through the top part of this chart, which is the user enablement suggestion from Microsoft. This is not a lockstep method, meaning you have to do an exact amount of work in each one of these bullets, but think of it as a guided journey where early you need to get ready before you start handing out licenses, before you set expectations for this is how we need you to use it. We'd like you to get ready, make sure that the executive team, the leadership team is on board. We recommend something called an AI council. Sounds complicated, but it's actually just a group of folks who are going to learn about these rules, what rules apply to your organization, and make decisions about how you will apply artificial intelligence in your organization. It sounds a little complicated, but it's actually pretty straightforward. There's a lot of guidance on that. We do this with organizations all the time. We want to help you identify who in your organization most needs this, who would actually make good champions for this. The second box on onboarding and engaging, let's see if the slide, oh, here's our, you can go back to the AI Council guidance there, Marcelo. Yeah, I wasn't sure if we had left this slide in there, but yeah, when we talk about establishing an AI Council inside your organization, we really want you to make sure you involve representatives from across the footprint that will be using Copilot so that they can help influence what these rules should be. Get some governance in place, make sure everyone understands ethical use of AI, understands how to set up the scenarios that they're going to try, and then lay out as an organization something of a roadmap. This will give us kind of short term, let's look for these early wins. Long term, this is the other data we want to bring into this, and then monitor that to see if it's working for you. Make sure that the integrations that you need in order to grow, when you say roll out new Copilots or use existing ones and make them available to larger groups of people, that is done in sort of an orderly fashion. And this AI Council, think of it as someone who's a little bit ahead of everyone else on their understanding and on their use of AI tools. So as a part of getting ready, we want you to get the right proof of concept team in place. We recommend you start with a very small group, highly motivated people, folks who definitely want to try this, and they may be playing with AI on their own. They might be ChatGPT fans. They might already have Copilot at home, etc. Another thing we want you to do is start setting up how you'll communicate to people about this. Make sure there's a place to go for help, that there are known individuals who can do that support. Put some early principles in place, tweak those, guide those as you roll this out, and look for feedback right away. When you start using it, what most people will do is they'll use it for something personal and individual. Gradually, you'll have to grow your ability to use things in a team setting. Okay. Let's see. Now on onboarding, now we're starting to roll out. And again, we mentioned a proof of concept, a small group going early. We'd like to make sure that you have the right amount of training in this stage, deploy training. And one of the key tips we give you here is there's actually too much content. So you'll want to curate that content a little bit, curate it to the roles and how people will use this, and identify a set of champions in your organization, people who will be ahead of their peers in the adoption curve. Go ahead. So we mentioned have a training approach, collect feedback, have a champions approach, make sure the support staff collects what they learn as they get questions and solve problems for people, and share that out through your communications channels, and review everything with your AI council. That way the organization grows this shared understanding of how things are going, and you don't get that flat spot where there's no conversation, no dialogue about Copilot. It's just kind of sitting there. You want it to be an active thing. Go ahead. We mentioned these 10 scenarios to try first. We'd like for you as an organization and as individuals, start with one or two of these, but don't feel like you have to use this list, and don't feel like if you have access to data, start writing queries against it, start writing prompts against it. And if you have this community in place, start sharing those prompts, sharing those results.
Hey, Steve, a common question we hear is, and you've probably heard this many times, is Copilot going to change the data if I ask a question?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Think of it as a query, like your assistant, like you're asking a question of a person. No, it doesn't change the data unless you have a Copilot set up that is meant to, and Bruce can talk about how this works when he gets on the technical side, unless you have an engine that makes choices and changes data based on what it finds. No, you generally are querying your data that you have access to. You're not changing it. We always start with prompts. We help people write good questions. So we can send you this tip sheet. Again, the challenge is not finding training. The challenge is there's almost too much. And there's some fantastic free training. What we usually guide clients toward is sort of a curation effort where you have someone in your organization keeping track of the most valuable resources to you and setting up almost like a mini curriculum based on the scenarios that you've chosen to use. So things like writing good prompts from the start, that's an early skill that you want to get very good at. Under delivering impact, now you're up and live and you want to expand this, or you want to get ready to expand this. Continue to push more training to the larger groups. Find out what user experiences people are having. Take that feedback to tweak the approach with later groups. Go ahead to the next slide. It has a couple more bullets on this. We want to make sure that you follow up on these three key parts of change adoption. Make sure everybody knows, make sure there's buzz marketing going on, but also tactical support messages like, here's where you go for help. Engage your sponsors, engage your council, make sure that you have some sort of roadmap so they know what to say where to reinforce this, and always push the learning, push the feedback, and use those champions as your community to grow your shared knowledge. And finally, as you extend, imagine that you start to pick up a capability in a facility and using Copilot. Now you should start looking for higher value scenarios. Go ahead to the next slide. I think it has an example, or it could be in Bruce's material. Yeah, when you start picking up levels of adoption, you can actually use your Microsoft toolset to find out what roles are taking advantage of Copilot. This can be very helpful if there are people with the same role that just happen to not be using it. You can use that community, use the insight that you have about use to help people find the right information they need to leverage Copilot. We would advise you too that as your adoption goes on, if you do run into flat spots, almost always it's because people are a little too nervous to take that first step. They don't know where to start. That's why it's critical that someone in your organization be a part of that council and be a part of that implementation team, watching for where it's being adopted and where it's maybe stuck. All right.
Yeah.
And I think, is this into Bruce's material?
Yep. So you can see Steve did a great job kind of outlining that. And you can see how this just kind of rolls out in waves, right? You start with kind of a small proof of concept. You understand it. What the heck is this? You roll it out to a pilot group. You just keep rolling it out as time goes by. And you do this kind of methodically and very purposefully and along these two tracks of human change and technical skills. So we're going to dive into the technical side a little bit here. So the get ready, the starting point, I think one message I have here, just generally speaking, is Microsoft has a whole bunch of tools free for you right as part of your tenant. So there is a Copilot optimization assessment that helps you take a look at things like security and am I ready for this, and really helps you to build a whole implementation plan. And if you go to the next slide, you can see there's a lot of information out there that you can get. This optimization assessment goes quick. It's like 30 minutes of your time, but also gives you a whole bunch of other resources that you can tap into to kind of really make sure that you are doing the right things and to help you start to build this implementation plan. So next slide. From an onboard and engage standpoint, here again, we've got resources out there, and you can go to the next slide, Marcelo, to really help users. And I think the big thing here is understanding kind of your security and your governance overall. And I'll just mention this quickly. You are covered with Copilot right from the get-go because this is laying on top of Microsoft Graph and it's laying on top of that semantic index. So it's hard to go wrong in that regard. However, the thing that you do have to be conscious of is the fact that Copilot has access to all of your stuff, including the stuff that you perhaps shouldn't have access to. Now that's kind of a fault of somebody within the organization that gave you access to too much stuff, right? So there are some tools there within SharePoint, for example, that you can enable to help reduce that risk. But additionally, Microsoft has some other tools there. There's sensitivity labels that you can bring to play. There's a technology that's part of Microsoft 365 called data loss prevention. And so this helps to trim out some of that content that's most sensitive and make sure that that doesn't get bubbled up in the context of Copilot. So, and you can kind of take that to some manual steps, or the best in class is really automating a lot of those steps. So next slide. So once you've kind of done that, then it's like, how do we get the most impact? And this is something, once again, we're rolling this out in waves. And Marcel, if you go to the next slide, this is an awesome, awesome tool, set of tools. One is to help you establish a management plan. So as you roll this out to more users, you have to understand, how do I support them? What are the things that I have to continue to look for in terms of governance and security? And once again, there are tools there to help you with this. And if you go to the next slide, Marcelo, one of the really awesome tools out there is the fact that there is a Copilot dashboard out there. This shows you your readiness and how ready you are. This shows you how well users are adopting Copilot. It shows you the impact that's being made. And it even shows you what users think of this just by their actions. Once again, this is culling all of this information via Microsoft Graph, which is the back end of Microsoft 365, to really give you these out-of-the-box reports that are very, very robust and really help you to guide this forward. Next slide. And finally, we already talked about this a little bit, is you continue to move this forward, and probably towards the end of this is being able to do custom copilots, right, in Copilot Studio. And I think that this isn't always the case, but I think generally speaking, you want to kind of crawl and then walk and then run, right, with Copilot, because I think this gives you the most bang for your buck long term. But as you get into some of the custom things, and Marcel, you can go to the next slide, this is where you say, okay, let's keep going, right? And I think that AI Council that you set up can really help with this. They can be the ones to kind of aggregate together ideas that users have, because you will have tons and tons of ideas as users begin to use this on a more personal level. They'll ask, well, what about this? Could we do this? How about this idea? And I think it's the AI Council that can take those in and really say, well, what are some of these opportunities then that we have, and which ones should we prioritize, right? Which ones should go first? So Marcel, if you go to the next slide. So just to kind of wrap this up, and you can click into the next slide, Marcelo. This is really something that you can use across the entire organization. I think you have to be looking at all the different potentials and where this makes the most sense, all of the different people within these groups, and which ones make the most sense to start with, and how you will kind of roll this out. And really, this technology, it's new, it is very exciting, I think very kind of impactful. But at the end of the day, it's like a lot of technologies, it's an investment, right? And you want to get the biggest bang for your return, biggest return for your investment. So one of the ways to do this is to continually keep this in mind. And Steve put this slide together, and I just love it. It's like when you come up with an idea of where you want to use Copilot, it's like, well, what is the benefit, right? Is this a big benefit, or maybe kind of more of a marginal benefit, right? Is this something that we can pull off technologically, right? Does this take some skills to create a custom Copilot, and we have none of those skills? Or is this something that it's like, well, this, I think this is probably pretty straightforward, and we can really do this, right? And then from a change perspective, we could come up with this idea, but if the users of this are not really all on board, then you got to figure out, well, where are they going to be at, right? If I give this to them. And this really helps you kind of evaluate kind of where these scenarios can really provide that kind of bottom line benefit to the organization. So really, I think Copilot, right? Enhance your productivity, better decision-making, better customer support, saving money, scalability. You can do whatever you want with this. There's a whole platform here to scale this up as high and as deep as you want to go. Making the organization more innovative, and bottom line, more competitive. So what about some costs here? So this is something that some of you may or may not know. There is a consumer version of Copilot, and that's free. That can also, a consumer can also buy a pro version of it as well. But typically we are talking about a business context. And so you still have the free version there that you can use as part of Bing Chat and the whole search extension. But also you have a Copilot for Microsoft 365. That is the one that lays on top of all of the security, lays on top of all the data protection, something that you have total control over, and fully customizable through Copilot Studio or Azure AI. And that one, by the way, $30 per month per user. So then will I get a return on that? And what are some of the other costs? Well, Marcelo alluded to this earlier. We put together a budget and planning spreadsheet. We will send you a copy of this. Takes a look really at kind of where we at as far as the costs and the benefit. So we can look at what would this take from a proof of concept standpoint? What would this take to kind of roll this out for the first year amongst a bunch of users? And then just ongoing costs. And that includes licensing costs, the implementation costs of things that you have to do as an organization, costs that you will incur internally. Perhaps you need to reach out to somebody like us for consulting services. What are those costs going to be? And then on the flip side of the coin, what are the benefits? What do I get for this? And doing a real ROI assessment as far as the bottom line on this whole thing.
Hey, Bruce, we have a quick question in chat. So does a $30 per month license require a certain Microsoft license?
It does require any one of the Microsoft 365 licenses. Let's put it that way. So
okay, got it.
So we are going to send you a copy of this spreadsheet that we use. This is something that we have filled in some averages for you, but it's also set up so that you can fill in your own numbers. So you can look at our numbers and say, well, that's probably not us because we're not average. And so you can tweak these numbers up and see what you think the return on investment is going to be. Once again, we'll send this to you tomorrow. As far as some of the services that we do a lot of these initial proof of concept things and really do these over the course of a few weeks for organizations. And we provide help on one of three different levels. One is where we just instruct you is here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do next, right? Another one that is probably the most popular one is where we get directly involved, but we don't do all of the work. So we work with you, kind of side by side with you. And then the third one is where you might say, man, this is awesome and we want to get going on it, but we do not have time for this right now. And so we will fully take charge of this and conduct the whole thing for you. So at least that gives you some kind of sense of where some of this falls from a cost perspective. And once again, usually starting with a small number of employees, kind of an initial pilot group, and running for a duration of probably 8 to 12 weeks.
And I'll toss in there too that this is where that stoplight slide comes in, where Bruce mentioned, if you're going to invest in 8 to 10 people giving this a shot, you want to make sure they're the right 8 to 10 people who want it, people who can show some value using it, and people who will help give you feedback on how to approach the rest of the group.
Okay. Well, thanks, Bruce and Steve. Thank you for that very insightful presentation. I'm sure everyone now has a much clearer understanding of how Microsoft 365 Copilot can impact the way you work. Why should you choose Impact Group as your Copilot implementation partner? Some of the key reasons include our Copilot team has over 50 years of combined experience. We have decades of experience in the Microsoft ecosystem. We're relationship driven and we build strong partnerships with our clients. We have a number of capabilities surrounding Copilot, from implementation to business process improvement to custom Copilot development. Our approach really starts with fully understanding your business, identifying areas of opportunity, and aligning our delivery to meet your specific needs. If you have additional questions after the webinar or want to dive deeper into how Copilot can specifically benefit your organization, we're here to help, and don't hesitate to reach out to us after today's session. Now let's begin our Q&A session. We'll stand for a few minutes after the presentation to answer any questions that come up. If we don't get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with you individually. To help kick things off, Bruce and Steve, I wanted to read one of the comments in chat, which is a very real concern for a lot of organizations. Thank you, Robert, for the comment. But it reads, governance seems important. If you can integrate this into all sources of documents, emails, etc., it could pull information that may border on tricky territory. And it's just a comment, but wanted you to address that.
Yeah, Bruce, do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Sure. Yeah. So once again, Copilot and even custom Copilots are laying on top of that whole semantic index. It's laying on top of all of the security that's already baked into Microsoft 365. It does not have access to information that you do not have access to. So it's not looking at everybody's information. It's looking at your information, providing you feedback in the context of you. And that would also be true if you set up an agent that's acting kind of more autonomously. You're setting out those parameters on how that will function. So I think that's one key thing. Another thing is, unless you do something very customized, your information is never going to ChatGPT or any of the AI models.
Right. Right.
It is not used for that at all. Those models do not have access to your information. So that information is yours. When you do a query, it is using the smarts, the intelligence of that model, and applying it to your data. Once again, security trimmed data, and then giving you a result, right? But that data is not leaving your organization, and everything, and this is just fundamentally baked into Microsoft 365, right? So I think that's an important point to note, is that this has all of the security in place that Microsoft 365 already has in place.
And I'm going to add one small thing to that around the governance idea. Getting a council in place, what that does is it helps to eliminate the sort of the fear that comes with not understanding a new domain or a new tool. And what you'll get is you'll get average, ordinary people in your organization asking really, really hard questions and then going and finding the answers in the context of your business. And that council, they don't have to know everything. They just have to entertain those questions and go help find the best answers to them. So questions like, can Bruce now read my email by typing a query into Copilot? Well, that's a legit question, and the answer is no, because it's my email. It's tied to me in security. So, but if Bruce sends me an email, that email becomes part of the data that he can read in Copilot, or his Copilot instance can go read that. So understanding how people access information, understanding what's exposed to this artificial intelligence, and even like Bruce mentioned, your data doesn't go to ChatGPT and there it's gone now. There's all sorts of constraints on that. And having some group in the organization know that and feel internally that same sense of concern and get that concern addressed, that's really critical to driving adoption. So that's the heartbeat of governance.
And I'll mention one more thing to Robert's question, because it is a good one and an important one. And that is the fact that Copilot does have access to your information. And I alluded to this earlier. So if you ask a question of it, it will look at all of the information to which you have access. That includes information that you shouldn't have access to. And that is really the risk that you run, right?
Yeah.
Is not that it's going to get information that it shouldn't have. It'll be the fact that it has access to all of your information, even information that you were wrongly given access to, right? And so that is really a lot of the effort, is to try to make sure that we deal with those kinds of scenarios and minimize those risks.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions?
Great. Thanks for all the interaction in the chat, everybody. I really appreciate that, because that helps us get a gauge on what matters to you, and it helps us kind of guide the content a little bit. So we do appreciate all the chat
Okay,
today.
we just have a new question from Nicholas. So can you mark files to be excluded from Copilot? Users are going to have sample or test files all over the place that will mix in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another great question. And I kind of alluded to that earlier too. There's different ways that you can tag information, and then you can tell Copilot to exclude that information. And that's important, because sometimes there is information to which you need access, but that you don't want Copilot to have access to, right? Maybe a lot of organizations put very stringent use requirements and governance around information such as social security numbers, right? For example, and private client information like that. And you can have Copilot just say, yeah, you can't use any of that information, because even when a person uses it, we've got a whole bunch of safeguards in place to make sure that that only gets used in a very, very narrow context. So you could get that excluded from Copilot.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah, if not, we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. So thank you again for joining us today. We want to honor your time so you can get back to your day. We truly appreciate your time and engagement. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcel. Thanks, Bruce.